Within hours of the election result in Bangladesh, Prime Minister Modi dialed Dhaka and spoke personally to Tarique Rahman, who is all set to be the next Prime Minister of Bangladesh. The BNP has distinctly and handsomely won the election, but it is also worth noting that the Jamaat, with more than 70 seats, has clocked the highest number of seats since the birth of Bangladesh for the Jamaat and will now be the major opposition party in Bangladesh. This has been an election in which the Awami League was not allowed to participate, and leaders of the BNP are already talking about how they will be formally requesting India to extradite Sheikh Hasina. A lot of implications for the region after the Bangladesh result. We'll be talking to experts in a moment from now. I'm Barkadat, you're with the Mojo story. Bangladesh has voted, and the man you see on your screen is all set to be the next Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Tarique Rahman, the son of Khaleda Zia, leader of the BNP, who only just returned to his home country after years in exile in London. In his speeches during the campaign, he spoke about remaining equidistant from all the other major countries. This at a time when, under the Muhammad Yunus interim government, Bangladesh was seen to be tilting towards Pakistan. From an Indian perspective, there is no question that there are security challenges arising in the wake of China trying to increase its footprint in Bangladesh, and this cozying up that we have seen lately between Dhaka and Islamabad playing out even in cricket and T20 politics. The Prime Minister was quick to reach out. First message came on X congratulating Bangladesh for the completion of its election, and the second was a phone call to Tarique Rahman, who is all set to be the next Prime Minister of Bangladesh. The Jamaat will have a role, perhaps a bigger role than it's had before, as a significant force of the opposition. The Jamaat chief invited controversy even during this election campaign when he compared working women with prostitutes. The Jamaat has not won. The BNP has won distinctly and comfortably. And BNP leaders, as I mentioned, are now talking about formally beginning the process of asking India to extradite Sheikh Hasina, who continues to be in exile here in the NCR Delhi region. I want to introduce our three guests today as we look at the implications of the Bangladesh result, of course, for India, but for the region as a whole. General Hasnain is with us, military veteran, former General Officer Commanding of the 15th Corps, always a pleasure. I also want to welcome, for a Bangladesh perspective, our colleague today, Shafkat Rabi, who is with the centrist nation, very avowedly taking a position between the left and right of politics in his home country. Thank you, Shafkat. Good to have you with us. And also joining us is veteran diplomat, somebody who knows Bangladesh like the back of her hand, Ambassador Veena Sikri. Thank you very much. I want to start. Today is a day that belongs to Bangladesh. Let me start with Shafkat. How do you read the significance of the result today, Shafkat?
Thank you for bringing me here. The results are significant for Bangladesh, particularly because this is an election most likely since 2008 that is somewhat fair, and since 2001 that is definitely free and fair, because most likely the 2001 election among the Bangladeshis is known as the most free and fair last election that was taken place. So in that sense, depending on how you count, it's at least 25 to 17 years or 25 to 19 years of like a distance between the last fair election to this one. So that's significant. There are people in their 40s and their 50s who went to this poll and came back and they say this is for the first time they are taking part in a free and fair election. So it is very significant from that standpoint. And from the standpoint of the result, Bangladesh chose the moderate, middle of the road political party, which is BNP, over somewhat center right or towards the right political party of Jamaat-e-Islami and its alliance. So that is another.
Would you have been happier? Would you have been happier if the Awami League had also participated?
Having more parties is good. Awami League's participation right now among the people is not very popular demand, particularly because after they left, there was no extension of apologies or no remorse, no regret, nothing from the Awami League leadership. So that sentiment is very raw in Bangladesh right now. So, and there are scientific polls that showed the
Reflected
demand
as
is not that high.
I mean, my only submission is that could have been reflected in the elections. They could have taken part and been rejected. You know
Yes,
what I'm
that
saying?
was in a more democratic way, in a less criminal offense way, that would have been nicer. But as you know, there are 1,400 people that were killed during the departure of Sheikh Hasina, or fleeing of Sheikh Hasina from Bangladesh to India. The emotions are raw among the people. So and there are polls that found that emotion being very raw, scientific
Okay.
polls. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective. I want to bring in Ambassador Sikri now and General Hassan. Ambassador Sikri, I'll start with you. You have often said on this program that you felt that Muhammad Yunus was delaying elections. These elections should have probably happened much earlier. They have taken place now. Indian leaders, starting with the Prime Minister, have wasted no time in reaching out to the new leadership of Bangladesh. The Prime Minister has already had a telephonic conversation with Tariq Rahman. The West Bengal Chief Minister Mamta Banerjee has also posted her comments. Bangladesh shares 4,100 kilometers of a border with India. There are direct impacts, some might say, on even the internal politics of Bengal and Assam that are both headed for elections in a few months from now. How do you read the result, ma'am?
I think I can say it's good that the elections have happened, but I think certainly we have to understand that a lot of what Mr. Shafkat Zabi has said can be hotly contested. Even the question of free and fair elections, because we all know the visuals which have come on social media in huge numbers about the evening before the elections, and they show the night time how the voting actually had already started and the ballot boxes were being stuffed. And we know the Jamaat people who were caught with huge amounts of money. And so all of that was going on. It's absolutely par for the course. All elections in Bangladesh have been like that. So I would not give any credit or lack of it to say that this was much freer and fair than earlier. I don't think those comparisons hold good. I think certainly the absence of the Awami League was a big factor. And I think it's a big factor in the results as well. And I don't think there's any excuse for absenting the Awami League, except that if you look at it, I think the bigger picture is that from the minute the regime change operation took place, the Jamaat-e-Islami was the power behind the throne. They were the ones who guided the entire future of Bangladesh in the last 18 months. And Muhammad Yunus was their spokesperson. So they had every opportunity, and they did use all that opportunity to, they changed the entire judiciary, they changed the entire election commission, they changed the entire, even bureaucrats, and certainly the media was completely muzzled. So there was no reflection at all from the media in Bangladesh as to what is happening within Bangladesh. And certainly these figures of 1,400 also are hotly contested, because this report written by Volker, the UN Human Rights Report, it covers a period up to 15th of August, which is, more than a week after Sheikh Hasina left the country. So I will leave all those for one side, but I will say that there was every expectation that because the Jamaat-e-Islami was the power behind the throne, so they had done a lot of individual seat engineering and individual preparation of their own.
Why do you think they didn't do better then, if they were the power behind the throne?
I'm coming to that. That is exactly the key point that I'm coming to. That actually, that is why everybody was expecting that Jamaat would definitely do very well, be close to a single majority on their own. And the second fallback position was that there would be a unity government, that neither, all the poll surveys really showed by the end. In the beginning, the polls showed a big lead for BNP, but towards the end, a neck-to-neck race between the BNP alliance and the Jamaat alliance. And with that, the expectation was there would be a unity government. I think what has happened is that Jamaat from the very beginning chose to ditch the BNP, which was the original alliance partner between 2001 2006, and chose to go for an Islamist alliance. So all the Islamist parties were with the Jamaat-e-Islami, Islami Andolan Bangladesh, Khilafat Majlis Bangladesh, even, and in the very cabinet of Muhammad Yunus, you had Islamist parties. The Hizb ut-Tahrir was there, banned Islamist organization. Hifazat Islam was there. So it was completely seen as an Islamist government. And I think over time, this excess of Islamism, that they even had Sharia law, it remained in their manifesto, although at the end they removed Sharia law as a
Yeah.
as a demand, and because of that, the Islami Andolan Bangladesh left the Islamist alliance and fought on their own. So I think this excess of Islamism has invited a huge reaction. But we know that even the transcript of the conversation between the American diplomat and Bangladesh journalist, which came in the Washington Post, that was a message that America is also supporting Jamaat-e-Islami, and they were expecting that because of that message, there would be a lot of youngsters who would vote for the Jamaat-e-Islami. But I think the Islamist factor and the women's vote, exactly what you referred to yourself, Barkha, that the women's vote after that remark about women made by the Amir himself, and then the women's head of the Jamaat-e-Islami said, "Oh, but that's quite okay for the Amir to say that, because we know that men are managers of women." So these several factors have swung
Created a backlash. They created a backlash of some kind against the Jamaat.
a huge, not only these last two were the biggest backlash, but overall the movement against, and I would say this is a tribute to the people of Bangladesh, that they have voted with their feet, moving away from Jamaat-e-Islami, because they're moving away from an Islamist agenda for Bangladesh. And
that last point is a really important point, and I want to just take that. I know, ma'am, you have more points, but let me just bring in General Hussain, and we'll come right back to you in the second round. General Hussain, a couple of contextual points, especially for an Indian audience as well. The parliamentary panel led by Shashi Tharoor flagged the earlier situation in Bangladesh as being among the greatest strategic challenges since 1971, expressed concern about Pakistan and China's involvement. The Jamaat in particular was seen to be close to Pakistan. We have seen the renewal of ties between Pakistan and Bangladesh. We have seen the politics as they've played out in cricket. Now, when Ambassador Sikri says a tribute to the people of Bangladesh, they chose the less extreme option, they chose the more moderate option, something I think Shafkat and Ambassador Sikri would agree on, whatever else they may disagree on. From an Indian perspective, what do you see? The Jamaat will still be a vocal political force. It has about 77 seats. The Awami League is out of the running for now. What is also important is we are seeing early statements from BNP leaders, maybe they're rhetorical, we don't know, saying they will be formally urging India to extradite Sheikh Hasina, something the Muhammad Yunus regime also did. How is this going to play out for us?
Thank you, Barkha, for inviting me for the show. First, my compliments and congratulations to the people of Bangladesh. We've been on your show so often for the last 18 months, always speaking about all these things, the various fears and tribulations that we always had about the situation in Bangladesh. And one can only say today and sit back and be satisfied that everything worked out peacefully. That was the most important thing. But having said that, every one of us was also fearful of this fact that the Jamaat, from 5th of August, when the event started off 2024, we were all afraid that the Jamaat may come to power. How would we be dealing with it? But many of us were also analyzing at the same time the trend and tendency in South Asia, where you find that vocal and street power of radicals, Islamists, is very strong. You find this in Islamabad. You find this in Rawalpindi all over. You find this in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. You found this also in Dhaka, in the streets of Dhaka. But it was difficult to believe at that time that the trend in South Asia is that people do not, at the stage of the elections, people do not support the radical parties. That's been historically true. I thought this trend may not happen this time, and this time the Jamaat will probably come. But I'm pleasantly surprised. There's no doubt one reason that the Awami League is not there, so much of the Awami League's support has gone to the BNP. And I still do believe that street power in Bangladesh is not necessarily always Islamist. Of course, Mr. Shafkat would know it himself much better and probably be able to tell us. But I do feel that in being vocal, all the radical elements are very strong. They come forward, they have the kind of street generation capability, etc. But when it comes down to the hustings, people do not come out and vote for them. And that's a happy situation for us. But the only aspect of slight disappointment here is that there is a map which is going around at the moment. I think you may have seen it, Barkha, that the Jamaat has won all along the border belt with India.
I think we have that map. If we can,
It's won all along the border belt with India. And so that is not necessarily a pointer to anything. I mean, we may be very apprehensive about it at this moment. This could be a certain indicator. But I'm not worried as such about it. The time itself will tell whether that particular factor will be of any major concern to us as such. Now, coming to the issue of the demand from the BNP, and which is going to come formally very soon, I think it's still very early for us in India to start looking at this. Ambassador Veena Sikri and I have been so many times together on your show and many other shows, and have always supported this fact that Sheikh Hasina in Delhi, we have to keep her here and support her.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Just before you come to Hasina, there's the map.
There's the
want
map.
to just talk about this.
Exactly. This is what it was.
You want
Not
to just
only here, but in the corridor. In the corridor, if you see.
You want to just explain, sir? You want to just explain this? Yeah.
I was just wanting to say that in the far east, it is not so evident. Obviously, it is not along Manipur, Mizoram, and Meghalaya and places like that, but more on the West Bengal border, where we've had the greater problem of migration issues, etc. A lot of it in the area which is of great concern to Pakistan, the area of the corridor, where you have found visits of the ISI taking place, etc. These are the areas where you find the Jamaat presence seems to have become extremely important all of a sudden, or it may have always been there. I'm not even certain about it. As I said, I don't want to rush into making any deductions on this. We are tempted many times to try and deduce these kind of things. It can just be coincidental, nothing more than that, and I don't want to mention it. Coming back to this aspect of the repatriation of Sheikh Hasina, I think it's still too early. We have made the right signals. India has made the right signals. I think for the last 3-4 months, some very, very good diplomatic initiatives have also been taken. For example, our External Affairs Minister attending the funeral of the late Khalida Zia and things of that nature. Immediately, the Prime Minister picking up the phone and speaking to Tariq Rahman. These are all very good. I think anyone would appreciate that India, as a large neighbor, has been quiet, has handled it without any kind of vocal, being very vocally loud. And I think that has stood us in fairly good stead. That is the kind of policy we should go ahead with continuously. Let's not allow this issue of repatriation to enter into this too soon, because there are all kinds of sentiments attached to it. I think time will be a great healer in this.
Okay, I will bring up the repatriation question in a moment. But to you, Shafkat, on the Jamaat, I think it would be interesting to have your perspective. I was reading a comment on social media today that it is the first time in 35 years that Bangladesh will be led by a man. And somebody joked saying there are not too many countries of whom that can be said. The reason I mentioned this in particular is in the context of the Jamaat. Bangladesh has had two stalwart women leaders in Khalida Zia and Sheikh Hasina. When the Jamaat chief talks about drawing analogies between sex workers and working women, when the Jamaat does not nominate one woman on a single constituency, do you agree with Ambassador Sikri that one of the reasons that the Jamaat's rise was contained in the end, even though it had a coalition, many of which were young radical politicians, was the positions it took on women, was the position it took on theocratical politics that the rest of Bangladesh, or the majority of the people of Bangladesh, were not comfortable with?
So,
sorry, you're on mute. Yeah, go ahead now.
So it is absolutely true that many urban women and also women from the periphery, the ones that want to work, the ones are actively participants in the economy and cultural activities, they do not like Jamaat-e-Islami. I have had many conversations with women like that, and the only reason they did not want to have Jamaat in power was women-related issues. So that is one aspect where a good portion of the population, which is basically women, 50% of it, are apprehensive of Jamaat because of that. Jamaat has not helped that cause by making certain comments that you have seen. Some of those they have also disputed being hacked and all that. But keeping that aside, what we can say is that the baseline assessment about Jamaat-e-Islami is that they have very, very conservative religious views about women, and that is going to continue to hound them in the electoral prospects in days to come until
what
they
role
fix
do
it.
you see for them at 77, the Jamaat-led coalition?
Jamaat, keeping aside the women-related issues, Jamaat is trying to be. They are trying to position themselves as a pro-reform, pro-July, which is the anti-Hasina movement, and pro-business. All the other stuff, they are trying to be very progressive around it. Even around women, they have showcased that they have a lot of conservative women who support them. So, like you would see that they have had some large women's rallies and all that. So they played their women card from their angle, but in the end, it fell short because Bangladesh has heavy women employment statistics. I grew up in Bangladesh. Almost everyone of my mother's circle worked, and they worked for long hours. Jamaat-e-Islami making a comment about reducing women's hours from 8 to 5 was also another point that was completely unnecessary for them to say. So women-related issues continue to hound Jamaat in the electoral prospect.
I want to pick up, though General Hassan has asked me not to pick it up too soon, and I do take your point, but there's a question in our live stream on the Hasina extradition, and I want to take that to Ambassador Sikri. This is an Indian asking the question. Sheikh Hasina's political activity from India is very detrimental to India-Bangladesh ties. Either Miss Hasina be asked to refrain from all political activity or find another more favorable location. So, Ambassador Sikri, I don't believe for a second that in these circumstances, India will say, Hasina, please go back. So I don't think the extradition sort of urging by the BNP will necessarily lead any immediate results. But this comment is, there is now a new government in Bangladesh. An election has taken place. We're in a different space now than we were with the Yunus interim regime. Will India have to at least quietly say to Hasina that the speeches that she made from Indian soil and so on, not addressed to Indians, addressed to her own party workers, all that will have to stop? It will be a decision India will have to take at some point.
Look, I think that this extradition of Sheikh Hasina, this issue, it is not going to be such an important issue. Let me tell you, first of all, I think the new government will be very conscious of the fact that the whole trial of Sheikh Hasina, the kangaroo court, turning the ICT into the ICT was set up solely to try liberation war, people who had committed war crimes during the liberation war of 71. And then suddenly to put Sheikh Hasina's trial there, not to allow her to have an attorney of her own, and the person who was nominated by the state did nothing to protect her interests. I think that there are enough, I think even Sheikh Hasina's son, Wajib
Sajid,
Joy,
yes,
he said quite clearly that, Sheikh Hasina and her government and he himself, they're willing to take full responsibility for whatever happened up to the 5th of August, and they're willing to participate in any investigation, but they want a free, fair and independent investigation of that. And I think that even the UN report, which came out, this Volker Turk report, even though it went up to 15th August, etc., there is a sentence in that report which says that with the evidence available, we cannot pin the responsibility on any one person. He has said that. That's there in the report. So, I mean, this whole business of whipping up a frenzy against one person and then blaming that on India and then making it a factor in India-Bangladesh ties, I don't think that's a mature approach at all. And I don't think it'll happen. I think that Tariq Rahman as Prime Minister will be very mature. And we've already seen that. For example, in 2001, when BNP came to power, BNP Jamaat-e-Alliance, and when they won, they had a huge celebration. For 3 months, you won't believe there were atrocities against the minorities, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, the Sufis and Ahmadiyas, and it was terrible. But this time, he has very clearly said no celebrations. So he's given an indication that no celebrations, no hooliganism, no attacking any individual, no blaming A, B, C, D, nothing of the kind. So it's a very mature approach and it's good. And I think that's the way it should be. So why should it be that I mean, I can draw an example, I can draw a parallel with the presence in India for decades of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I mean, we've developed our relations with China. They have objections of the Dalai Lama. Whenever he says a word, there's a strong statement from China on that. But our relations go on regardless. So I do not think it is mature of either side to make the Sheikh Hasina issue as a make or break situation. That issue is there. I think the questions about the trial, the questions about the way she's been condemned to death, the questions about the way the whole party has been left out of political affairs in Bangladesh, all that has a lot to answer for. And the very same Western countries who were criticizing Sheikh, the same British High Commissioner who was there in 2024 and wrongly criticized Sheikh Hasina that, oh, the BNP hasn't taken part in the election, although the BNP was never banned, but they didn't take part, they chose not to participate. The same British High Commissioner is now fully accepting, of course, the Awami League has to get on. And they define the election as inclusive, despite the Awami League not being there, because they have changed the whole meaning of inclusive and say, no, it doesn't refer to political parties, it refers to the people. So I mean, I think all these factors have to be taken.
So let me ask you this before I come back to Shafkat and give General Hassan the closing comments. For you, given the Prime Minister has already picked up the phone, dialed Tariq Rahman, what do you see as the first areas of repair between India and Bangladesh over the next few months? Obviously, there has been concern over the rights of minorities, over the rights of the safety of Hindus, rather. We have seen a Hindu lawmaker also now be elected, speak out and so on. What for you are the areas of repair immediately?
I think that I would say again, I'll compare it again with 2001, 2006. One of the big issues that time was security, India's security red lines. And that time it was support to the Northeast Indian insurgent groups. And we've seen that, that was a huge issue at that time because they would commit acts in India, terrorist acts, and then run into Bangladesh. They were given shelter, they were given camps, they had businesses, they had homes, a whole lot. When Sheikh Hasina became Prime Minister, she said, I respect India's security red lines. And I am not going to help anybody that doesn't help Bangladesh in any way to have terrorists on our soil. So she handed back Anup Chetia, Paresh Barua disappeared to China, and so on. So for 15 years, the Northeast had peace and development. They even forgot that they were at one time these active insurgent groups. But in the last 18 months, they have come back. I understand that Paresh Barua is once again in Bangladesh and so on. So this is a big, India's security red lines have to be respected. We've seen Muhammad Yunus going to China and telling the businessmen, oh, come to Dhaka, we are the only ones who have access to the Northeast India. We've seen Muhammad Yunus showing maps of Bangladesh, exaggerated maps of Bangladesh. So all these issues are very sensitive security red lines. And I would say that respecting India's security red lines is number one, the big issue.
Sorry. Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. So the second issue I would say, which is equally important for both countries, India and Bangladesh, is the economy. And one of the factors that made Yunus so unpopular in Bangladesh and completely, I don't agree that his popularity came back in the last few months or weeks, completely unpopular because he couldn't handle economy, he couldn't handle law and order, complete chaos, a completely unconstitutional government masquerading as something, holier than thou, who knows more about Bangladesh than anybody else. And I think the economy is a vital interest. I think Tariq Rahman as Prime Minister will be judged on what he does with the economy. And I think that Muhammad Yunus distracted the India-Bangladesh economic cooperation so severely that putting it back is going to be very important for both countries.
So security red lines and the economy. Can I just ask you, Shafkat, before I come to General Hassan on those security red lines, your comments on the Jamaat, again, I know that you were not sort of rationalizing their position on women. But we have here Prasad saying, Barka, how can the Jamaat position itself as a reformist force while calling working women prostitutes? If there's a dichotomy, paradox, and an oxymoron in their stance and positioning, it is this. So, I'm sure you agree. I think you were only trying to explain what they're claiming, but I still wanted to read that out to you, ask you to respond quickly, and also ask you what you think will be the spaces of repair between Delhi and Dhaka.
Yeah, so that quote that's so controversial, and it was effectively used during the election campaign. Jamaat disputes that as a hacked quote from their Twitter, and
I
in
mean,
fact,
tough to believe, right? Tough to
yeah,
believe that.
but a fact-checking organization called The Dissent found some evidence that their account was actually hacked, but they could not prove whether the post was hacked. So keeping that aside, that statement was obviously inflammatory, and it must have had some impact in their electoral prospects. And what was your next question?
What for you would you feel would be the areas India and Bangladesh can immediately work to improve?
Yeah, I think we need to calm down in terms of our rhetorical fights that has been going on for quite some time. Because if you think about, aside from rhetoric, the two countries are not actually fighting. There were some economic embargoes, like stopping hotels and restaurants for Bangladeshis in Kolkata and stopping visa issuance. These are certain actions that India took. I think India exports about $12 billion of items to Bangladesh, and Bangladesh exports only $3 billion. So India has a $9 billion net trade surplus against Bangladesh. So the relationship is actually valuable from India from a monetary standpoint as well. So I think both countries will, and Bangladesh obviously respects India as the large neighbor and security partner and all that. So both the countries will come to their senses hopefully very soon, and rational decisions will be made now that you have a stable 5-year term government.
Okay, I know Ambassador Sikh is wanting to come in, but let me just bring in General Hussain. Ambassador, I'll come to you right after that. General Hussain, the security red lines, right? The Northeast, Yunus has often been, in his years in government, inflammatory, provocative about the Northeast. We know that. We also have the question of Pakistan, Bangladesh. We also have the question of China's infrastructural, economic footprint as an area of influence in Bangladesh. So let me ask you to elaborate on all of these.
Barka, firstly, before I come to actual tangibles, I think Tariq Rahman's statement on no celebrations but prayers is one of the most sensible things you can actually imagine in a post-election kind of a scenario. Because this is the kind of thing which dilutes passion on the street. The street is meant for transportation and the street is meant for walking, not meant for what it has been used all over the world otherwise, right? So I think this will be a very, very important thing, that the streets must get quiet in Dhaka and people must go back to building Bangladesh all over again. That's number one. I fully endorse Ambassador Veena's statement on the Dalai Lama. I think India has actually demonstrated all along how maturely and how well it can handle an issue such as expatriation or repatriation. Because this is going to be a sensitive issue, but as time goes along, perhaps we can desensitize it completely. And that's the way I think that the manner in which we've handled the Dalai Lama's case, and it should be the pointer for us. Having said that, the safety of Hindus, who's already spoken about, minorities, etc. I would compliment one agency which we have not even mentioned in our discussion so far, and that is the Bangladesh Army. The Bangladesh Army. You know, a lot of people think the Bangladesh Army is one of those third world armies, and I've served with the Bangladesh Army. I worked with them in the United Nations in a number of places. I find them completely professional, very capable. And it's unfortunate that this unnecessary thing which was happening between the interim government with Pakistan had led to all kinds of shenanigans which were leading to a break in the India-Bangladesh security relations. I hope this is going to get retracted, because the presence of the ISI in the corridor, around the corridor, or in other areas of concern for India, this is not something which I think Muhammad Yunus was doing it as an irritant towards India. You know, his typical, that awkward, immature style of leadership which he was conducting at this time, it was leading to this kind of a situation where it was actually a major irritant. I hope people will realize this and immediately withdraw from it, because Pakistan is the last organization which is actually friendly to Bangladesh. Where can you compare what capability India has to ensure the progress and the growth of Bangladesh? If you can compare it to anything to Pakistan, where do the two comparisons stand? at all. So this is a very important aspect. And the last very important thing, I want the restoration of cricket. I want to see the Bangladesh cricket team playing with here. They must come and play in Calcutta. They must play wherever it is. That is the final thing which will see a restoration of overall relationship.
I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to ask you about it. So you're saying it's time for the Bangladeshis to come here and play. Yeah.
Why do they perceive insecurity in India? They can come and play anywhere in India. I think when the passions run out, they are one of the most welcome teams to play anywhere in India at any particular time.
Well, I think that will be a space for repairing. I was going to close, but Ambassador Sikri, I did see your hand go up. If you have a brief interjection, to go ahead, ma'am.
Fully with what General Hasina has said about security. The security red lines definitely include what Bangladesh has been doing with the Pakistan army, allowing themselves to embed the Pakistan army with the Bangladesh. Very important part of security red lines. But I'd like to respond to what Mr. Shafkat Zavdi had said about the irritants. You know, the only way to remove irritants is a dialogue. And the Yunus regime in 18 months showed no interest in coming to India, talking people. You know, he went all over the world, for various things, but never had anything except that brief conversation in Bangkok with Prime Minister Modi. And even after that, the rhetoric continued, everything continued. So I think that, the most important aspect is to keep a dialogue going. And I hope that as Prime Minister Tariq Rahman will come to India, we'll have a good visit and we will be able to repair a lot of the difficulties. I agree fully that cricket is there, but let me tell you about the Bangladesh army. I fully support what General Hasina has said about that, the Bangladesh army is a very important source of stability and authority in Bangladesh. But what has been politicized is that the USA, on the one hand, tells the Bangladesh army, don't do this, that, or the other, and we will prevent you from going for UN peacekeeping. So they've been keeping a tight control on the Bangladesh army with this threat of UN peacekeeping. But on the other hand, in Pakistan, they allow him to, Asim Munir, to get away with the 27th Amendment. He's like re-strengthen the role of the army, and there's no threat to Pakistan to withdraw them from UN.
Well, Pakistan is a whole different show and a whole different issue. You have Imran Khan talking about cricketing, now having been lost his vision from torture. The Pakistan Supreme Court has finally stepped in. So I do agree with what both of you have said, that, where is the comparison? I will have to leave it there. On cricketing ties in particular, I think a lot of people in both Bangladesh and India would be happy to see those restored. All I can say is, with this election having been completed, with the Prime Minister having dialed the next would-be Prime Minister of Bangladesh, perhaps the worst, we can only hope in our relations is now behind us. Thank you so much to Shafkat Saab, to Ambassador Sikri, to General Hasina. Thank you to our audience, and see you tomorrow. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.